I'm Hannah, I'm the program associate at GIPL, and
I'm Joanna Kobe-Lipker, and I'm a community organizer with GIPL.
it's good to see all of you. I know we have a couple of new faces on this call, so I was hoping we could do a quick round of introductions. If you can just kind of popcorn around and say your name and what faith community you're with, that would be great.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, I'm David Daniels, and I'm with St. Catherine's Episcopal Church in Marietta, Georgia.
No, I'm Bob Pop. I'm with the Unitarian Universalist Metro Atlanta North Congregation in Roswell. So my first time.
I'm Myrtle Lewin, and I'm with the AA Synagogue in Central Atlanta.
Hi, I'm Kathy Hancock with Oakhurst Presbyterian in Decatur, Georgia.
So I'm Nancy.
B. Gross.
B, go ahead.
On. No, go ahead. Okay. I'm B. Grossman. I'm with Temple Emmanuel in Sandy Springs.
And I'm Nancy Daves from the GIPL board. And this is my first time joining this group. I'm doing it on behalf of St. Luke's Episcopal Church downtown. We are very, very interested in reconstituting our green team, creation care team, whatever. So we'll be looking to you guys for ideas.
And I just changed my name to Art Wickman at Emerson UU in Marietta.
I'm Patricia Russell from UUCA in Atlanta. And I think I've met Bob Pop, possibly at Susie, and I know Nancy.
Tiana, are you with us?
Missionary Baptist Church in DeKalb County. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes. I said Oceana. I'm at work. I am with Mount Welcome Missionary Baptist Church, and we are in DeKalb County, Decatur.
Awesome. Thank you. You're breaking up a little bit, but I think we caught most of that. Mount Welcome Missionary Baptist Church. So good to see all of you. Thank you for joining us, whether this is your first roundtable with us or you've kind of been here for the last couple of months. It's good to see all of you. This is a space for green teams across the state to gather, to share what you've been working on, to ask questions to us and to each other. We want this to be a place where you can brainstorm ideas, where you can share what your challenges are as a green team, and where we can really help each other out and share resources. So I'm glad that you all are here. How typically this has been run is we have a short presentation at the beginning, either from Joanna and myself or from one of the green team. So if you would like to share at an upcoming roundtable about what you all have been working on, if you have a cool project that you'd like to tell others about, we invite you to reach out to us and let us know that you would like to present. We'd love to highlight the work that your green team is doing. So please let us know if you're interested in sharing a little bit about your green team. So we have a short presentation, and then the rest of the time will just be time for questions and time for kind of sharing what you all are working on and what you need help with. So today we're talking about recycling and waste, because this has come up in conversation at all of our roundtables so far. And so Joanna and I have a short presentation to share with you all, just kind of giving a little bit of a background of kind of what the recycling situation is here in Georgia and some of the ways that your green team can start to take action. And then we would love to have time for any questions that you all have and any input that you have, things that you've done that have worked well with your congregation, please feel free to share that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll go through the presentation to start with. All right, so what's up with recycling? We feel like we get this question a lot. So we wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about the recycling world. So in 2017, the EPA reported that there was approximately 267 million tons of solid waste produced that year, but only about 94 million tons of that was recycled or composted. So there's a lot of waste that is out there that can be diverted into other waste streams instead of ending up in the landfill. That same report from the EPA said that only 8% of plastic was recycled in 2017, which is a very low number. So there's a lot, I think, that could be recycled that's not getting recycled. And so that's one of the things that we want to try to address today. 66% of paper and cardboard was recycled. So that is, I think, across the board, something that we've seen that is easier for people to recycle. And that seems to be kind of the primary way that people are engaging in recycling. And 27% of glass was recycled in 2017. And so we wanted to share these statistics as just kind of an example of what the reality is versus what I think the potential could be to divert some of these waste streams into recycling or compost, which we have talked about, I think, at our first roundtable, you talked about that. So just a little bit of background on the recycling situation. So until 2018, China imported almost half of the world's recycling. That created a huge market for recycling. In 2018, they banned the import of plastics and other materials that were not up to new standards. And there were a couple of reasons for this. So they did change the standards for recycling. A lot of recycling was polluting their countryside, and it was becoming a problem for China to be importing that much of the world's recycling. So they imported a ban, which meant that other countries really lost their main market for recycling. So much of recycling is driven by the economy. There needs to be some kind of financial motive to sell recycling, some market to sell the recycling in order for it to be profitable for cities and counties to run recycling programs. So with this ban in 2018, one of the biggest markets in the US was gone or greatly diminished, which is why around that year and in the years after, we have seen a lot of change in recycling programs. So some of you have asked, like, why could we recycle glass in the past, but now our county no longer offers that? A lot of that is tied up in this market that we have lost. And so I just want to give that background because I think that is helpful to kind of understand why we kind of are faced with the recycling situation we have right now, where all cities and municipalities have their own it's up to them to decide what they want to do with recycling. So that's why, like, Fulton County and DeKalb County, even though they send their recycling to the same municipal recycling facility and have the technical ability to handle the same amounts of recycling, there are different, like, you can recycle glass in the city of Atlanta, like that is one of the things on the curbside pickup list, but it's not in DeKalb County. And that's because it's up to the city to decide what they think is profitable and what they're willing to pay for that program. There's no federal recycling infrastructure, so every community can make their own decision about what to recycle. So that's another reason why recycling is a hard thing to address, because we can't sit here and say, like, this is what you can recycle, this is what you can't, because it's going to be different for every community depending on what city you live in, what county you live in, what your recycling programs are. Some cities offer business and residential recycling, curbside recycling pickups. Some only offer residential. And so faith communities have to contract with, like, an outside hauler to take care of their recycling. So it's just kind of a complex situation for all of these reasons. And I think that's just kind of helpful background to understand that why this is such a big, complex problem to try to address.
And also when we say recycle, the definition we're using is taking that item, recycling it into exactly the same item. So taking a plastic water bottle and making it into another plastic water bottle, as opposed to taking that plastic water bottle and making it into a sweater. That's different. So what we're talking about today is truly recycling.
So just to kind of give an overview of some of the things that are easy to recycle versus some of the things that are harder to recycle. So aluminum is really easy to recycle. It uses a lot less energy to reproduce an aluminum can from an existing can than to make it from a new one. So aluminum is a great thing to recycle. Most like curbside recycling things. Oh yeah, like our seltzer cans that we love here at the Gipple office. So yeah, those are really easy to recycle. Most curbside recycling will pick that up. Most municipal recycling facilities have the machines and what they need to recycle those. So that's a really great thing. Like if you're thinking about recycling for your faith communities, that I think like having a can to collect those kinds of recyclables, that's great. Glass is kind of complex, but glass is the same way in that it requires less energy to reproduce glass from other glass materials than to make like a new glass bottle. That's actually really energy intensive and expensive to do. However, glass is complicated in that it can be dangerous and expensive to recycle. So when glass recycling gets picked up in curbside recycling, when it gets to the municipal recycling facility, the first thing that happens to it is it gets crushed into tiny pieces. And from there, that crushed glass either ends up in the landfill or it has to go through a second cleaning process before it can be sold. And so that makes it kind of expensive. Some municipal recycling facilities have the ability to do that second cleaning and some don't. For the ones that do, it can still be an expensive process. Glass can also be dangerous for the facility because if it can contaminate, like the crushed glass can contaminate other recycling streams, it can damage machines easily. So it can be hard for municipal recycling facilities to process glass. That's one of the reasons why it's not like widely available in curbside recycling programs. There is a difference though if you take your glass to a drop-off location, that glass, because it can be recycled whole instead of crushed, there is a much better market for that. And so that's actually a much better way for you to dispose of your glass. So even if your curbside recycling has a glass pickup, it's actually better for you to take it to a drop-off location like Charm, the Cab Farmers Market, or the Emory University Recycling Center. Those are 3 great drop-off locations in the Atlanta area where you can take your glass recycling. And that's going to be a more profitable and a better way to recycle your glass. Anything else to add on aluminum?
And just one of the reasons it is so much more energy intensive is the temperature required to make, to melt the metal or to get the metal components from the earth to begin with. And similarly with glass, the temperature has to be so incredibly hot. And sand is used to make glass, and sand is also apparently a depleting resource, the type of sand that's used. So that's why, virgin glass and aluminum are very resource intensive.
Paper recycling, like I said with the statistic at the beginning, I think it's one of the things that is most commonly recycled. Paper can be recycled, unlike aluminum and glass, it can't be recycled forever. I think we were just listening to a podcast about this, and I think they said it can be recycled like 4 or 5 times before it kind of loses its ability to be reused. But recycling paper is great because then you're not cutting down new trees. And we know that trees are one of our best defenses against climate change because they act as carbon sinks, drawing carbon down from the atmosphere. So anytime that you can buy like recycled paper, paper towels, toilet paper, paper plates, any of those products, that's going to be a good choice to make. And anytime that you can recycle paper or cardboard, I know some congregations just have like a paper cardboard recycling pickup. That's a great option if you can't, support a full recycling program, because it is one of the easiest things to recycle, and one of the best ways to save our trees. Okay, so plastic. I feel like this is where a lot of people have questions, and plastic, I think, is one of the things that we're really trying to fight against. For so many reasons, plastic is bad for our earth, from the process of making plastic to really the complications of getting rid of plastic, and just the amount of plastic that we have produced, in the last couple of decades. There's not really a viable market for the amount of plastic that we have. And plastic is in everything we use, like all of our to-go containers, like everything we buy at the grocery store comes in plastic water bottles. It's everywhere. And so one of the things that we would love to work with your faith communities on is strategies to reduce the amount of plastics that you even purchase and bring on site, because it's one of the products that can be really hard to get rid of in sustainable ways. So you will see on the bottom of like plastic containers, there's like those arrows that make a triangle and a number inside, and that number will tell you what kind of plastic it is, and that has to do with how it's made. And certain types of plastics are more recyclable than others. Based off of the market that we have in the US right now, plastics 1 and 2 are the only truly recyclable plastics today. So even though your curbside recycling service may say that they accept, I think often it's plastics 1 through 5 and 7. Plastic number 6 is styrofoam, and that's really hard to recycle. You can take that to a place like Charm, but that's not going to often be, found in your commercial or residential curbside recycling pickup. So, but even though the county or city will pick up 1 through 5 and 7, I have a slide in a minute that kind of shows you what happens to that here in Atlanta, but usually plastics 3 through 5 and 7 are incinerated, so they're burned for energy. And plastics 1 and 2 are the only ones that are actually able to be sold for recycling. And so I think it's just important to know that distinction, because, even though plastics 3, 4, 5, and 7 are not ending up in a landfill, they are not actually being recycled to be made into like products again. Burning plastics for fuel has its own complications. Like, it's good that it's not ending up in a landfill, but then you're also producing a lot of pollutants when you're doing that. So that's, not the best option. So really the best way to address plastics is to stop using plastics.
To not have it to begin with.
Yeah. So this chart here is just kind of an example, shows all of these different types of plastics, 1 through 7, examples of all of those. So like, plastics like 5 is like your Tupperware containers, your yogurt containers, your food containers. That is one of the things that's, burned for fuel, not actually truly recyclable. But you can take a lot of these things to places like Charm, and you can go on Charm's website and they will say what they do with all of the products. So Charm might be a place that is able to recycle those materials instead of just taking them to the landfill or incinerating them. And then here's just kind of an example of what happens to your plastic recycling. This is for the city of Atlanta and DeKalb County. So again, they say that they accept plastics 1 through 5 and 7. The recycling for both of those places is taken to Pratt Industries material recycling facility in Conyers. And according to Pratt Industries, plastics 1 and 2 are sold, and plastics 3 through 7 are either incinerated or taken to a landfill. So I think that's just kind of good to know where your recycling is ending up, because even if you're putting it in the bin, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's getting recycled.
And one thing that we haven't covered is also the plastic that ends up in our oceans and bodies of water. Mm-hmm. And it can break down, and our fish are eating it. And there have been studies that find if you eat fish, or maybe even if you eat any food that's produced in land or water, you are ingesting plastic. So they have found bits of plastic even in mother's breast milk. So it's we're eating it, our fish are eating it, it's everywhere.
So what should you do about this? So we have a couple of suggestions, and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'd love to have a discussion about this. But one of the things that you can do is call your hauler, figure out who's picking up your recycling. So if you have a contract with a hauler, that should be fairly obvious if it's like waste management or advanced disposal, something like that. Or if you are one of the, if you're calling for your residents, or if you're a congregation that does get commercial curbside recycling pickup from your town or county, you can call your city, find out who they contract with, who the hauler is, and you can call your hauler and ask where they take your recycling. That should be information that they tell you. And then you can call that municipal recycling facility and ask what they do with, plastic, glass, aluminum, et cetera. Like I said, I called Proud Industries. That's how I got that information about what they're doing with plastics 1 and 2 and 3 through 7. So they should provide you that information. Something else that I think would be great for green teams to do is to schedule a tour at your local recycling facility. So both Proud Industries and Charm offer tours. So you can go, you can see what the process looks like. You can ask questions of the representatives, like what happens to this material. I think that would be a great educational opportunity for you all to learn a little bit more about the process of recycling and where your materials end up. And then we are launching our new zero waste program, which is a comprehensive way for congregations to start addressing waste in your facility. So you can conduct a waste audit to assess your waste practices, to kind of go through all of your trash and see what's in there and start to think about how you might be able to divert some of that either to recycling or to composting. We'll talk to you about how to sign a recycling contract if you don't currently contract with someone, how you can start a recycling program on site, and then kind of working our way towards considering these strategies for reducing waste as a whole, to so that you don't, ideally you won't need to recycle and compost as much, because you will be reducing the amount of waste that you're generating. And we have some sample sustainability policies and some other webinars and resources that we can share about how to kind of move your congregation towards zero waste.
And, as individuals, we can only do so much, and it feels like we're often shamed into buying plastic, but it's, I think, almost impossible to go to a grocery store and buy food without somehow buying something in plastic. So at a point, we really need to apply pressure to the producers of those packaging and stop it from even being produced, so that we're not then left with the burden of safely disposing of it. So there is a website called Break Free from Plastic, and they have different movements that you can be a part of. There actually was a bill that was introduced, or it was written, I don't know where it went, because the last date I saw was 2020, but you could reach out to your congressmen or women about supporting that legislation. You can, directly contact, the yogurt company that you like to use and say, would you consider using a different material for your product? So there's ways that we can do things as an individual. We can not buy these things. We can also make sure we don't even have to make that decision, that it never even comes to us to begin with.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and then we're happy to answer any questions, but we'd also love to kind of hear from all of you. I know some of your green teams have taken some great steps to address waste, so I'd love to hear what all you have done, and then kind of what you're struggling with around this topic and what we can help you with.
May I ask a question? I bought a supply of these orange bags because now they're accepted in. And I look at the instructions of what you can put in there and what they're going to do with it. And I'm really ambivalent. I wonder if we could talk about that a little.
I
Yeah.
just had a conversation with the people from Hefty. I'm chair of the Sustainable Norcross Commission, and we just did a huge anti-contamination education program for the whole city to try and get plastic bags and plastics and contaminants out of the recycling stream. And Hefty came up with this program and sent everything. They were doing a pilot in Cobb County. They sent these bags to 4 different counties without approval from any of the any government entities. They just sent them to individuals. West Rock in Marietta is the only plant right now that can take them. Everything is handled, it's pyrolysis, or basically melting it down for fuel or burning it. We're not exactly sure what's going to happen. Their bags are very expensive. Everything I can gather from people that I've talked to, it's Hefty's way, and Dow Chemical, I think, is the parent company of Hefty, to keep things out of the landfill and to make them look like a good corporate citizen. The bags are expensive. Many haulers are not taking them. Most of these recycling plants, they have 28% contamination. Like 28% of what comes into these plants goes out as trash. For them, it's a cost of doing business. Most of the haulers, they just pick it up. So this Hefty thing we've been dealing with it for the last 4 weeks, and I think everything's going to Nexus Fuels. So we're trying to get some more information on that. But the Hefty bag looks great when you first look at it, but when you dig deep into it, it's fraught with issues, in my opinion. So
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. We've been talking a lot about that and agree with that assessment. So I think you probably know more than we do even. So thank you for sharing.
Well, it hit us like our first day of this, and these bags started showing up. And after we got done telling everybody, no bags in your recycling, take them to your grocery store. And then these bags showed up. So
that's the thing that we were just talking about that earlier. Like, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is with like the plastic film, thinking that can just go in recycling. And so, I was telling Joanna that at my apartment complex, every time I take my recycling out, I see so much recycling tied up in these plastic grocery store bags that are not recyclable, that are contaminating the whole batch of recycling. And so
they tangle up the equipment. We did a tour of West Rock in August. They have hours of downtime untangling these bags. Publix will take them and bail them. It's recyclable, but just not at curbside. The big problem is everybody has these lists of what they take and won't take. But if it's in your can, they still pick it up. There is no incentive. And in Georgia, landfill, it's almost more expensive to recycle because of our historically low landfill rates. If you go to Florida or New York, it's $100 a ton to landfill your material. So there's a financial incentive. The whole system is broken. But so we have to figure out a way to make it better for, in our little piece of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've struggled too with the Hefty orange bag program in the city of Atlanta. And when it came in the mail, I thought, what's this? And this bag dropped out. And I further researched it as well. However, I have filled one of them and went to Kroger and bought some more, and actually put in things like they didn't have triangles that I've stored here and couldn't bear to throw away, plastic silverware, some straws and things like that. And I do understand, I think that it is burned for fuel or broken down into small molecules, possibly and converted to something else. But, you know, that, like you all said, that's controversial. I don't know. I'm getting real discouraged about, you know, when I have people say to me, you know what, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter what an individual does anyway. And recycling, it's not happening, and just throw it all in the trash. And I've been a recycler since the first Earth Day. And I'm trying to get to zero waste. And I actually have accomplished that, but it makes me feel better. I think I am, but you know, listening, all the stuff I think is being recycled probably isn't. And it's just, I don't know. It's just very depressing. I mean, I don't know what we do about it. The city of Atlanta said, or I understood the orange bag could go in the blue bin. Before the orange bag program, I took all my plastic bags and my styrofoam to Publix. And now I'm putting it in the orange bag and not taking it to Publix because of what the Hefty program said they take. I don't know what to do. I just
The
don't know.
orange bag, that will be burned. If you take it to Publix, it will at least be recycled.
So you think it's better, and you absolutely know Publix recycles it?
Well, according to their website, I mean, I as absolutely as I know. I mean, I haven't seen it be recycled, but like Pratt, I don't know if they're accepting the orange bags. I know West Rock had agreed to, but not all of the recycling facilities are. So, you know, kudos to you to try and go zero waste, but there's a lot of either wishful recycling or misinformation out there. And unfortunately, the onus is on us to figure that out. And if we weren't doing this program, we, you know, and we wouldn't have known that, but not all recycling facilities are actually taking the orange bag. So I would check to see where yours goes and make sure it's not going in the landfill.
I know, it's very discouraging.
It's hard. It's hard to figure it out.
And then I'm hearing things now lately, like if you go to 10% happier and listen to podcasts, that this global destruction issue, there's nothing, it's not going to matter whether I turn on the light or do LED and all this, the individual's not going to make a difference in this terrible climate crisis we're in. So I don't know, I'm feeling a little discouraged about it all today.
I'm hearing your emotions, and I totally am there with you, Patricia. I want to make two comments. The first one is that we need to sort of embed a social justice lens onto the conversation we're having. And we don't think about the people who actually do the sorting at these recycling plants. And that's a responsibility we have, because these people are largely the have-nots. And, you know, how do we, as we put something into that recycle bin and it's not quite clean or whatever, how do we think about the impact on the individual sort of people who are doing this hard work and who are completely invisible? Second thing I want to say is that I hear your frustration that what you do doesn't make a difference. But I think that there was something in the chat about advocacy. Your role is to be a kind of a light unto the nations in your congregation. And so is mine. And I think that the way in which we influence others is really important. And it's really important not because it's going to make that hell of a difference. It's really important because this is our own personal moral and ethical journey. And my moral and ethical journey and yours and yours and yours are all part of why we are alive and wanting to do something on this planet. So I'm going to mute.
Thank you. That's yeah, that is so true. And yeah, and I'm going to continue to do what I think I can do, because ethically and morally, that's what I think I should do.
And I
my
think
values, it's my values, you know, how can you?
Yeah. I think we all identify with feeling very hopeless and that our individual actions seem small and irrelevant. And I recently heard a podcast that I cannot recommend enough. It's from a podcast called How to Save a Planet. great name. And we can put in the chat the name of the specific episode, but it really does break down the merits, the benefits of the individual versus the collective action. And there really is a place for both. And ultimately, our collective action is more powerful, but a bunch of individual actions can often, really unleash a large collective action. So we're all doing the right thing. There's more we can do. There's always more we can do. But you're not alone. We feel the frustration, but I'll put the name of that podcast. They also had a great one on recycling. We got some of our information for today's presentation there. I listened to one on wind power, on nuclear. Very, very, very easy to understand. Great podcast. I'm not getting paid to say that.
Okay, thanks.
Well, and if I can interject as someone who this is my first time attending, and the last time I attended an Interfaith Power and Lighting event was, I got to say, 6 or 7 years ago. Okay, so basically I'm coming out of dormancy and getting re-involved, but it sort of underscores the importance of groups like this, because I think it helps you know that you aren't alone. Okay, number one. Number two, you have new people like me who aren't as fully educated as some of you, or who have been recycling individually for as long, and that I think serves a really important function. And then it gives us the information that we can go and pass along to individuals in our congregations. And I just think, it's sort of like a fire. When you have a coal that's sitting out there by itself, okay, it'll probably extinguish and burn out. But if you put several coals together, you can have a big fire. And I sort of see educating people on things like recycling, on things like climate change, as being analogous to that. So I know it's easy to get discouraged, but again, Ms. Russell, just want to assure you, you're not alone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And some of us are coming around. Okay, so be encouraged by that.
Okay.
So let me interject that Paulita Bennett Martin, who is a friend of mine who works for Oceana, was running Oceana's work in Georgia, and now has been promoted in Oceana and is in charge of the plastics, the legislation nationally on that issue. So I sent to Hannah and Joanna the national bill. There also will be bills in the Georgia legislature this year, and I don't want to make that part of Gippel's remit, but I'm just sure Joanna and Anna will appreciate it if I don't do that. But if you are interested in that, I'm sure that Oceana, they are collecting, individual people to be involved in this kind of stuff. So if there are any of you that are interested in that, send me something, and I will pass your name on to the people that are working on that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Nancy. And, we are always happy to support your advocacy interests. And so if this plastics is something that this is something that we've heard for like months that people are wanting to take action on. And so there will be bills that we can do some advocacy trainings around that before the start of the legislative session. And we can kind of tell you what those bills are and how you can talk to your representatives about that. So, that is actually a perfect action step. And we've had some conversations. There was a group of Methodist churches who I had met with earlier this spring who were kind of rallying around taking some advocacy around that. And so I do think that I've heard lots of interest in this, and this could be a group that, you all could come together and have kind of an interfaith coalition of, we could do a letter writing campaign together. We can think of some ways that you all can get involved in advocacy on these issues.
And
Coming with
feel
one.
the-
Oh, sorry. Go on, Bob.
I have to say, I feel the frustrations that are voiced on this call. I posted the name of a book, Catherine Ayo's new book, Saving Us. I'm not finished with it, but I'm halfway through, and there's a lot of good stuff in there about the whole psychological and emotional side of dealing with climate change and environmental issues. And I strongly recommend it, especially for people of faith, since she's, pretty prominent in the Christian climate movement. And it's quite a good book.
She's good. She's excellent. She's pretty much all over the place with different things. Yeah, she's good.
Thank you for recommending that. Yeah, I think there's a term called eco grief that we used to kind of talk about these feelings that we have, this like deep grief that we have for what's happening to our planet. And I think that's not something that I often like name when I'm doing this work. Maybe it's, I call it anger, or I call it, being overwhelmed, but I think at the heart of it, it really is like grief that we're feeling for watching the devastation that's happening to our planet and feeling kind of hopeless in that. And so there are some other resources that we can kind of recommend, some other authors that we know of who speak about eco grief. But I also want to take this moment to remind you all of a monthly workshop that one of our other board members offers. It's called Sacred Activism, and it kind of does move you through this process of talking about your grief and your frustration and your hopelessness, and kind of helping you get to a point of feeling hope and identifying some ways that you can take all of those feelings and make something productive out of it. It's like I said, monthly workshop. It's free, it's virtual right now. So in my follow-up email, I'll put information about the next upcoming workshop for you all. But that might be something that if you haven't attended one of those workshops yet, something that you should attend and kind of, talk to other folks too about some of these feelings that you're having, and think about how you can turn this into something hopeful.
Do we have time for another comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
You were speaking at the very beginning about how so much of our recycling prior to 2017 was shipped to China.
Mm-hmm.
And I worry about, I'm kind of glad that doesn't happen any longer for two reasons. Firstly, the huge cost of sending the stuff on containers around the planet. I mean, why are we doing this? And secondly, if we can't be self-sufficient and sustainable, not only in the United States, but in Georgia, maybe in Atlanta, maybe locally, how do we think about this as we are affecting our local environments everywhere? We've got to accept responsibility. So that's my comment.
Call from telemarketer.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that. I think that I'm also glad that we're not shipping it to China. When you think about environmental injustices kind of associated with the ways that we handle so much of our waste, and just around environmentalism in general, like sending our waste to another country for them to deal with really feels very ethically, morally wrong, and not what we are called to do. And so I think, what really needs to happen here is having some kind of, exactly what you said, the infrastructure to handle that here, the programs and policies in place to be able to take care of our own waste.
Mm-hmm. And people often talk about the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. And that's an intentional order. Reduce, don't even buy it to begin with. If you do, try to reuse it. If you have to, recycle it. Another one is refuse. So you can say, no, thanks, I don't need a straw, or no, please don't give me silverware. So that's another R to kind of keep in your vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
people talk about like 12 R's. There's a whole bunch of other R's.
I was trying to want to overwhelm you guys.
Can't remember what they are though, but
Yeah, there's more.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions related to waste, or just kind of in general, ways that we can be supporting your green team, things that you're struggling with, topics for the next roundtable?
I'm sorry, I know I've spoken quite a lot, but right now I'm trying to work out how to address this particular issue, that at our synagogue, recycling or composting or any of these actions requires that we have buy-in from the staff, but that also, and by staff, I mean people who are sitting in offices or working from home or whatever it happens to be, but also it requires a different kind of buy-in from the maintenance staff who actually do the hard work. And sometimes there's a kind of breakdown of willingness to be stubborn from that point of view. I don't know what the correct word is, but a person who is hired to do a very sort of menial task of emptying out the trash bins and carting this doesn't have any power. And so there's this complex sort of socio-cultural sort of mishmash that I'm trying to sort of work through, of how do we enable people who, I mean, I see them almost daily and I like them very much as a team of four. And how do I get these people to understand that they have the power to say, I'm sorry, you actually didn't break down that cardboard box, or you know, you still left the styrofoam inside that cardboard box. I can't put it in recycling. It's not my job to do it. It's your job to do it. So, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I'm dealing with.
You, to the degree that you can, you include all stakeholders in the decision, in the conversation. So if you're going to roll out a new recycling program, you absolutely must have everyone who is part of that whole process at the table talking about it. And because if anyone knows how things work, it's the people who are doing it that you may not see. So it's important to include everyone.
I think that's also where like the importance of education for the congregation comes in too. Like if you are rolling out these new programs, finding ways to offer a class or a workshop, a webinar, some way to kind of inform the congregation about what the program is and how to properly recycle, so that it is not, you know, the burden of the, you know, of the staff to take care of it, that it's something that the congregation is educated on and has buy-in on. That's, I think, such an important piece of rolling out these programs.
I can add one more thing. I know that Charm takes rechargeable batteries, but we were at a loss regarding alkaline batteries. And I've learned Batteries Plus does, and a few other kinds. So for alkaline batteries and lithium, to recycle a pound is $3.99. So it's not free. I checked it out, and 20 AA batteries is about a pound. So just to kind of throw that option out there, the price may vary. It's going to depend on the market. And Batteries Plus operates as independent places. So it kind of depends on who that particular store makes a contract with, but something to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Did you say rechargeable or non-rechargeable?
So I've just assumed, I've just taken my rechargeable to Charm. And so I didn't really inquire at Batteries Plus. They do take a number of different kinds of batteries. So they may well take The rechargeable ones, I was really looking for a source to recycle alkaline batteries. But if you've got a store nearby, just stop in and ask. I asked if they had information on the website, and the answer was really no. I asked, do you have some printed information, and they didn't. It appears to be somewhat, driven by the local store. I do know they don't charge for all types of batteries that they recycle.
But to have to pay for this is perfectly natural, and we should not object to having to pay for this.
Home Depot takes lithium batteries, right? So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for this great discussion. Really glad that we could talk about some of these issues and name some of the things that we're feeling overwhelmed and frustrated with. And I'm grateful for all of you for the work that you are doing in your congregations. I hope you know that it is impactful and it does matter. So thank you all for being those leaders for your faith community. And I hope that you can join us for the next roundtable. Please feel free to reach out to me or Joanna if there are ways that we can support you and your green team. We'd love to set up a time to talk to you one-on-one and kind of hear where you're at as well and how we can help you with what you're working on. So thank you all so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye. Glad I could join.